Okay. Hello and welcome. We're now ready to begin today's webinar, The Current and Future State of Work. My name is Bethany Dennis. I'm with the Rutgers Center for HR and Leadership Development, and I'm going to be your host and moderator. Today's webinar, we're going to explore the rapid changes organizations are experiencing as a result of COVID and strategies for defining what the future of work is going to look like post-COVID. This executive and professional education webinar is presented by the Rutgers School of Management and Labor Relations Center for HR and Leadership Development, which develops and delivers innovative learning and development solutions that strengthen and advance the individual and organization as a whole through a powerful combination of expert class instruction and peer interaction led by distinguished Rutgers University faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. This webinar is scheduled for 45 minutes and it's being recorded. So participants are all muted, and please submit any questions that you have in the WebEx questions box, and we will answer them, leaving time at the end for formal Q&A. And I also ask when you put your questions in the Q&A or chat box, make sure that you address them to both the presenter and the host so we both can see them. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker. Maryanne Spatola has over 20 years of extensive experience in the human capital area focused on talent management, executive coaching, strategy, leadership, and organization development in financial services, information technology, education, and professional service organizations. Her ability to combine academic theory with practical experience enables her to help organizations create innovative solutions with sustainable results. She's on the forefront of the rapidly evolving workplace trends and brings these insights both to her work and the classroom at Rutgers and NYU. We really appreciate you being here, Maryanne. Now it's over to you.
Bethany. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here with my Rutgers family today and the opportunity to talk to all of you about what the current and future state of our work looks like. So we will talk about how COVID has accelerated our organizations into the future of work, thrusting them into new stages of digital maturity. And then we'll talk about how do we sustain the technology adoption that we're already seeing for the future? How can we build resilience into our operations? And which leadership behaviors will be required in this digital world? So we're going to explore these rapid changes as a result of COVID. And as Bethany mentioned, we'll talk about some strategies for helping organizations really define, be intentional and deliberate about what work will look like, the world of work, in a post-COVID world. So I thought it would be interesting just to do a little from-to comparison of the changes we've experienced moving into this digital world over a number of decades, right? This is now our fourth industrial revolution. So we've moved from assembly lines to automation, where we're seeing robots on the scene and RPA, AI, and other things. We've moved from classic driver training, which we still do, but we've moved to driverless cars, and they're actually in production in California. We've also moved from the internet, which was one of the greatest expansions of technology reach and changes to the world of work, to now what we know as the Internet of Things, and everything is connected to a mobile device. We can turn off our lights, we can put on our security devices, we can open garage doors remotely and manage so much of our lives through the internet, through a mobile device. And here we are today in the accelerated fourth industrial revolution, where robots have come on, drones are being used by Amazon to deliver packages. We have big data and analytics on the scene. We have augmented reality, cloud, and a whole bunch of other things that have changed the way work actually gets done and who does that work. And then we had COVID hit. And once COVID hit, we made a 72-hour pivot into the virtual world, which has really transformed our workplaces over the past 11 weeks. It's hard to believe it's 11 weeks. So let's take a look at 3 predictions for what we think the future workplace will look like based on all of these changes and activities. And there are three that I want to share with you. The first is a distributed workforce wins. So the idea here is that we're not sure what will happen post-COVID in terms of people returning to a brick and mortar workplace. We think there will be some hybrid to it, and some organizations that may never come back. We'll talk about what that means, but what does that do to a distributed workforce, and what does that look like? We'll look at experimentation becomes the rule and not the exception. Organizations have had quick turnarounds to be effective and continue running their businesses, shifting their business models in many cases to now offer products, services, and to keep their operations running in a virtual world. So we've learned a lot about how to be flexible, nimble, lead in the moment, and things like that. So we'll talk about what does that mean for the future workplace, as well as this notion that people-centric organizations will begin to take hold. We've learned so much about our employees and our workforce in ways we never imagined during this global pandemic, where we've been thrust into a virtual world. Everybody's been working from home, working remotely, and we want to be able to continue some of those good benefits that we've seen that come out of this, keeping our people front and center on our organizations and making sure we align talent and strategy on a go-forward basis. So let's look at each of these individually, and we'll talk more about them. So the first one, a distributed workforce wins. We have seen in this COVID world is productivity gains and losses. As I mentioned, this is week 11 of our largest remote working experiment in history. And we have basically challenged every orthodoxy that we know about remote working. Can it work? Does it work? Will people be productive? Will we be able to collaborate? And what we know from recent surveys is there are clearly challenges that we've seen in the remote working environment because everybody is working from home. We have children being taught remotely because schools are closed. And you have everybody working all in one space. So you have more distractions. We have to be more focused. We have to be more flexible in how work gets done and when it gets done. There's also been some interesting gains in terms of people recognizing I can be productive in this environment. I can actually get more done. We're benefiting from not having long commute times and allowing people to refocus that energy into their day and get things done. Potentially less meetings or less of the non-meaningful meetings. There was one meme floating around on the internet that I really loved, which basically said, so we didn't need that meeting after all. And those are the kind of efficiencies that we're discovering as we're forced into this virtual world of work. Another great benefit that we've noticed is remote work has been actually on the rise over the last decade. In the last 10 years, it's gone up about 91% in terms of workers interested and wanting to work from home and making that work for the organization. And what that's done for us is given us a greater access to talent anywhere in the world. It's allowing organizations to diversify their talent strategies, to tap into talent segments they may not have been able to in the past. We're able to find talent that is interested in this flexible work arrangement and can get things done very effectively in that world. So it opens up the door to bringing in diverse talent from anywhere in the world and different talent that we may not have been thinking about in the past. Lastly, what we're noticing is the collaboration and engagement levels remain high. This was another orthodoxy that we challenged because we've been told it's not the same, which truly it's not, but it doesn't mean it can't work. And what we're realizing is there are a ton of technology tools that are out there, easily accessible and available, that help us make collaboration work and keeping engagement levels high. Organizations and leaders have gotten pretty creative about how we do that. There are platforms like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Huddle that help provide a central hub for sharing information, so that makes that exchange easy. Basecamp, Asana, and Trello help virtual teams collectively track the status and the deliverables of any ongoing initiatives. And then we have platforms like Zoom, Adobe Connect. Today we're on WebEx that offer the virtual meeting spaces. And then there's some fun tools like Quizbreaker, Water Cooler Trivia, and a platform called Prelude that offer online virtual icebreakers, ways to keep it fun and light, but keep people connected and sharing. Mural.co is another great technology tool that works off of a canvas design, like a platform that allows for brainstorming and process mapping and problem solving. I'm using that one in some of my classrooms. So we do have lots of opportunities to keep the same level of productivity, the same level of cohesion and collaboration, and make it available for talent anywhere in the world. The next prediction is experimentation is the rule and not the exception. And what we've seen in this massive pivot organizations have had to make for COVID is we are really embracing this notion of thinking outside the box. And new ideas are being tested, have been tested at all levels of the organization. People have pulled together to try and make things work. They have pivoted on their operations and how to get things done in this virtual world when we can't sit or walk down the hall to talk to somebody. And we need to make sure we keep doing that in the future. That's a great benefit we want to bring forward to the future workplace. And keep challenging our old mental models. What we know is trial and error makes progress. It's progress over perfection and making progress every day. So we want to be sure that we bring that concept forward into the new world of work. And then embedding this iterative processing throughout your organization is another trend. There was no playbook for managing a global pandemic. And so we have learned on the fly to be responsive, to go with the flow, to look at things on a day by day, sometimes hour by hour basis, and have flexible operations that we can adapt and adjust and be adept for what the future may hold for us. And lastly, almost most important, is apply a learn from failures mindset. Again, it's progress over perfection. It's our ability to have an acceptance of things that won't be perfect, won't be 100% every time, and will allow for us to create a world where people are okay to do that. It's a safe way for people to try new things on. It's your best way to break down the old orthodoxies of what can hold us back. I've worked with CEOs and C-suite leaders in the past who literally have said, work from home is a cover for people who are watching their kids. Well, clearly, everybody was watching their kids that has a family during this pandemic, but we're able to make it work. And there's lots of surveys out there that have demonstrated the level of productivity remains high. People are making the adjustments they need to make in order to get this to work and be able to keep this level of productivity high and keep people productive, engaged, and working. But it all relies on our ability to be a little more compassionate, a little more forgiving, a little more understanding when things aren't perfect, and our ability to keep trying, right? We want to make sure that we don't give up, that we have a experimentation mindset that allows this to work. The third prediction is the people-centric organizations will take hold. And what we've noticed during this time is leaders who are stepping into this world and leading with empathy, courage, and compassion. And we are really bringing the human element back to the forefront of what's required in organizations to be successful. It is thinking about what our people need from us, what they need in order to be successful, in order for the organization to be successful. It's a beautiful mutual benefit approach to how we run our organizations. And what we've seen is a lot of insight into what the lives of our employees are like in this virtual world. If we were to look at the screens today of people who are on this webinar, likely people are in kitchens, people are in living rooms, people may be in home offices. I see clients who have turned their laundry basket upside down to put their laptop on so they could stand up like we had a standing desk in the workplace. But what we're getting is insight into the lives of our employees. We're seeing families finding more time to be families. We're finding people who didn't realize that the commute was killing them, that it's a big part of adding to the stress of their lives. We've seen people who have been impacted by COVID themselves, whether they got sick or a family member got sick. In some scenarios, we're witnessing people who have lost loved ones to COVID and how they're dying in hospitals alone. It's a really interesting period of time to get that level of insight into the lives of our employees. And in many ways, insight we would have never had this global pandemic not happened and had we not moved to this virtual world. And what I really hope for is that as we bring organizations back to whatever the next version of this will be, is that we allow for those types of leadership behaviors and that type of focus to really bring forward into what we lead with when we figure out what the next phase of our organizations look like. The other thing that's really coming to the forefront in a people-centric organization is the purposeful business model comes forward. If you think back to August of 19, we had the Business Roundtable who put forward a new statement about profit and purpose and organizing our companies in a way that allow for both of those things to come to the forefront and be part of how the organization operates, why the organization exists, and to make it a better world, not just for customers and shareholders, but for our workforce at the same time. And during this crisis, what we have seen is executives who have given of their own salaries to give back and secure jobs for employees. We have seen executive teams forgo bonuses for the same purpose. We have seen people who come to help others who have taken a philanthropic approach to helping others who are not as fortunate, and bringing this purposeful business idea to the forefront, allowing for people to really realize why they work in the first place and recognize that as we move into this new world, how our companies have responded during this crisis will matter. Did they step up and help secure jobs where they could? Did they apply for the right PPP loan protection to help keep their businesses afloat? Were they able to create new products and services for their customers that their employees could actually deliver on and keep the business in good stead and keep it going? And even in situations where we've had to lay people off or furlough people, how did we treat them? Did we treat them with dignity and respect? Did we help them all the way through the process? Were we there to provide for resources? And employees who stayed in the workforce during this time, did we provide COVID resources to them? Were they protected if they had to come into the workplace? Not all jobs, we realize, are able to work from home. If you're in manufacturing, if you're in a distribution center, if you're in retail in a food store, you're still having to go to work. And so what precautions were taken? What safety measures, what cleaning procedures were implemented? How did we step up both the physical safety and the psychological safety to allow our people to keep working or to treat them with dignity and respect if they were unable to work? That will play a big part in how employees view their businesses, their organizations, when we make a re-entry back into what the new world of work will look like. The last piece is our ability to refine who and how work gets done with people in mind. And so we need to really think about our organizations in a way that aligns the strategy and the talent in a much more deliberate and intentional way than we have before. So let's think about for a moment what a brick and mortar organization will look like when we come back. Cushman and Wakefield published an article about a month ago characterizing the about 10,000 organizations they've worked with so far to redesign and reinvent what the workspace will look like. And the article was called the 6-foot office space or something like that. And so some of those changes include similar things like we're seeing in the food stores, one-way aisles on the floors where employees will only walk in one direction at a time. We're seeing redesigned workspaces that have a 6-foot space in between them. So remember a few years back, we went to this big open concept idea. People actually sat at very long tables right next to each other with huddle spots and lockers, right? We didn't have independent spaces. Those kind of went to the wayside. So those types of spaces will get redesigned because we clearly are not going to sit that close to each other for some period of time. And they've implemented paper desktops that are disposable. So at the end of the day, you can roll up your paper desktop and throw it away so it's disposable. Conference rooms are being redesigned to only allow basically a quarter. If it held 12 people before, you can have 3 people in it so that you can just keep the same spacing. Entry in and out of the building is more organized and structured, and how you come in and how you exit. So there will be significant changes in the workplace itself to make it a psychologically safe place for people to come and a physically safe place for people to come when we come back to the workplace. And there are ramifications on that on both sides. We're also thinking about what do we do with our workforce who may not want to come back, who don't feel safe coming back, and what happens to them. So the whole legislative part of this, legal part of this that we're looking at in terms of the return to work strategies that many organizations are thinking about. So when we put them all together, those are the 3 predictions we're thinking about for the future of work based on a COVID world. So I'm going to turn it back to Bethany and we'll take some questions.
Hello, thank you so much, Maryanne. I am going to field a question from that's in the chat box first. Daniel Perez asks, do you believe that top management is going to be moving to a trust-related environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we have to. So what we've learned in this experiment, we go back to the myth-busting notion, is many executives for a long time have questioned whether remote work actually works. And I think what we're seeing in this crisis is that, yes, it does work. And so there is a trust component to that, where we believe our employees are working, where we believe they're working productively and effectively, albeit in different ways. So for example, if you have small children at home, you don't have daycare, you have to manage. I have clients who, where their employees are working together to adjust their schedules based on nap time based on, we're all working from home. So one partner has, they schedule every day in a huddle meeting. What does your schedule look like today? So they can manage who's watching the kids while they're getting their work done. But at the end of the day, the trust factor comes in to say, I trust that they're making it work and I trust that they're getting things done. It just may show up in different ways. And
Sure.
that's where we have to keep challenging our mental models. That's where we have to believe that people are doing the right things.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to this one. What changes are going to be required of the brick and mortar workplace?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what we just discussed in that last prediction, where the physical space, first and foremost, is probably going to be the biggest impact, because we don't know what those restrictions will exactly be like. There are things starting to be published. So if you're following good sources like CDC and other centers, they're giving guidance on what that recommendation will look like. Also includes wearing masks, having some of those disposable desk item, controlling the flow and where it goes. And then there are other organizations who are looking at staggered in and out. So part of the workforce comes in on Monday and Wednesday. Another part of the workforce comes in on Tuesday, Thursday, whatever that may look like. So there are some staggered approaches to help manage what the post-COVID restrictions will look like. But we also know that can have some serious impact for the business, right? So where there's revenue associated to those things or expenses of carrying the real estate, there's going to be some significant changes on the business model side as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, I've heard a lot of just in Rutgers about the staggered work week. We've heard all of these different things, that are potentially coming up. Okay, we've got this one twice. What behaviors should we be planning? I guess leaders should be planning for to be inclusive of that hybrid in-office and remote working environment?
Yeah, that's a great question too. What we've seen is, in some ways, it's back to basics. It's the general care and feeding for your people, understanding what their needs are at this time, what's going on in their world, so you can be there to help them navigate these times with resources they need to be successful. And at the same time, it's time to let go of old bad behaviors like micromanaging. So micromanaging never worked, no matter what environment we've been in. It's even less likely to work in a virtual world or in a hybrid world. So what we've seen a lot of leaders moving towards, again, using the technology, is to lean into a dashboard as opposed to, a status meeting every week where you're pounding people about, did you get it done? Did you get it done? Did you get it done? Having a dashboard approach, and a lot of the tools that I mentioned earlier allow for that. It's a way for leaders to have insight into what's going on and ask more thoughtful questions about status than it is to drill people about, did you get things done? The other piece about it is just making sure we keep the engagement levels high. And we've seen a lot of fun things leaders are doing to try and manage that. So I'm sure everybody's already seen the virtual happy hours, the virtual cup of coffee. But again, in that myth busting category, you still can do team building events. The tools and technologies allow us to put people in breakout rooms, bring them back together. You can still do whiteboard and Post-its and give people a chance to interact and have input and put new ideas on the table. So finding ways to do that creatively, I think, helps. We've had leaders who have used music. I work a lot in startups and IT world, and many of them are musicians by trade, by hobby. And so they do jam sessions, and they're making funny parodies about projects that didn't go well and what went wrong, and being able to talk with that. I had one leader who every week when they had their team meetings just to get together and see what was going on, he was wearing different hats So he would just show up in different hats and costumes and just trying to keep it light,
Yeah.
trying to keep it fun, and making it okay to be not the normal buttoned up, everybody's dressed professionally. Of course it has, you have to define that, but a little more informal and a way to really be engaged and keep people together and keep people working.
Thank you. I guess you answered probably part of this. I have a follow-up question with what you just said. I like the idea of the jam session. But what's your recommendation to help companies become more innovative and feel more comfortable failing during this time?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think it's so important, especially in this, what we know about digitally mature companies is they experiment more often.
Mhm.
And so what that relates to with the last question is what are those leadership behaviors? You have to allow for the risks to happen, right? It has to be an environment, a culture where we invite people to take a risk, where we learn from the failure and we don't chastise people for it. We encourage them to take those risks that are not, fatal flaws. We're not betting the bank on the business, but allowing them to try things on for size. And I think the great benefit we've seen through COVID is how quickly and how willingly organizations moved into that space because we had to.
Sure.
Right? I have clients whose business model was deliberately and intentionally a face-to-face type of model for all of their services. That was it. And so when COVID hit, they had to do a complete 180 and move to a technology base and reformat how they delivered services and how they engaged their customers in the products and the services. And everybody kind of jumped in with, well, why don't we try this? How about if we go this direction? What if we offered this versus that, and be able to adapt and modify? And those are the types of behaviors we need in when we come into this more digitally mature world. In addition to having some transparency around it. In the past, if we had a big flub in an organization, oh, you don't want to talk about that, right? It has to be an okay thing and not necessarily celebrated, although some organizations do, but be able to talk about it openly and what we learned and what we would do differently the next time around and help people learn from it collectively on the whole, which contributes to more of a learning organization where we're figuring those things out as we go and being more flexible and adaptable and understanding.
Thank you. Here's one. From Edward Hoffman, new employees learn the culture of the company, often working closely with other people within the organization. What might be some strategies? Hold on, I lost it. I guess to make a new or to help a new employee with or hold on. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Um, what might be some strategies to use to build a culture if you're hiring new employees right now?
Yeah. And it's still happening, right? So I know we're seeing massive numbers of people filing for unemployment, but organizations are actually still hiring. We have some industries that are exploding during this time because people have moved into this virtual delivery. So onboarding new employees is a critical piece of any organization, helping them understand the culture and understanding how things get done. And there are some creative ways you can do that. A lot of times onboarding programs can be easily adapted to the virtual world. Continuing to set them up with a buddy is always a productive way to go. Meet and greets to meet the right people in the organization can still be scheduled in a virtual world. And a lot of organizations have moved towards creating the videos, creating some, small chunks of content that help them get introduced to executives, to functional leaders, to how business gets done. So there's a lot of creative ways you can keep those elements of an onboarding program in gear. The thing that you want to watch for is it can feel out of sorts for people coming into an organization virtually for the first time, especially if those things aren't in play. So as the leader for that new employee, you want to make sure you're checking in to see how they're doing. You're engaging them in the right way, making sure they get set up, right? So now new employees have to get equipment shipped to them. And doing a little bit of that virtual tour and helping them get acquainted with the technology and the systems and where to find things. A lot of the same elements of onboarding are still there. It's how do we adapt for them in the virtual setting. But we've had, I have clients who have onboarded new people and they do the virtual lunch. Everybody comes together, they're still doing introductions. All those things can still happen. You just don't want to lose sight of them in the virtual world.
Great. All right, we'll just do one final question here. What other changes should organizations be thinking about in a people-centric organization?
Yeah, I think the big ones are in the redesign of your organization. And what does that look like from a footprint standpoint if you're moving into this combo hybrid of bricks, mortar, and virtual? What does your leadership look like, and how does your leadership embrace the people function in your organization to make sure that we really are paying attention to that mutual benefit between what the employee needs and what the organization needs? I think that's the biggest focus as we come into the people-centric organization, is making sure those two things stay in balance and taking all the things that we've learned, great insights from now having a different lens on what our employees go through, what their needs are, how do we create that flexible workplace to continue some of those benefits and pull all those pieces together. But honestly, the biggest change I think we need to have in this people-centric organization is this mindset of leading with empathy, leading with courage, leading with compassion. Because, you go back to one of the original questions, what about the trust factor? Mm-hmm. If those things aren't there, we're easily going to slip back into focusing on the what gets done, not how it gets done. And in the new world of work, the how is equally, if not more important than the way we've operated in the past.
Very good final words. Thank you so much. All right, so that's the end of the Q&A for today, and I just wanted to let you know that we're going to be running our 2 10-week virtual workshops. They're going to be half days, so we're going to be running them for both in the fall, and they're going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 to noon. So if you want more information about that, you can go to our website or just contact me directly. If you don't have my email by now, it's bethany.dennis@rutgers.edu. These programs offer the 30 business recertification credits if you're part of the HRCI Institute, and the HR for the Fourth Industrial Revolution also offers the 30 SHRM credits, and then both offer the 3-credit elective waiver towards the master's in human resource management from Rutgers. So if you're thinking about grad school, it's a perfect time right now. Our online program is absolutely amazing, and we can sure send you some more information about that if you're interested. And then our center is going to continue to host these free webinars every Wednesday for the rest of May. That was today. And then we're going to also offer them in June, and we're going to be doing some special 2-hour deep dive workshops that are going to be really intensive. We're going to be doing one on building your own social network, and we have a coaching one in June. They're going to be very personalized, and they're going to just offer a deeper level of engagement than you get on these 45-minute sort of teaser webinars that we have. So for more information about these, you can visit our website. It's similar.rutgers.edu/content/executive and professional education. And then just a reminder that we're going to be sending the recording of today's presentation to you usually within 24 to 48 hours. And that's it. Thanks so much for presenting, Maryanne. We really appreciate your time and expertise as always. And thank you everybody for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of the afternoon.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Take care.